Okay, we'll give it about a 10-second pause here. All right, it's 2 o'clock, and I just want to welcome all the students to our virtual town hall today. I'm Bill Persinger. I'm the Executive Director for Public Relations and Marketing, and will be serving as your moderator. I do have a few housekeeping items to share with you before we begin. These sessions are being recorded, as you've already heard, and will be made available on the university's Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter pages. We'll begin with a broad overview that may cover many of your questions. I'll present previously submitted questions to President White and the senior leadership team. To ask questions, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen so that we may present them to the group. If you cannot, if we cannot respond to all questions prior to the allotted time, we will post questions and provide answers, if possible, on the university's social media outlets previously mentioned as soon as possible after this session. Now with us today, we have the senior leadership team, which is comprised of Dr. Elisa White, the president of the university. If y'all wave your hands as I call your names. Dr. Rex Gandy, provost and vice president for academic affairs. Dr. Eric Norman, vice president for student affairs. Mr. Mitch Robinson, vice president for finance and administration. General Ron Bailey, vice president for external affairs. Dr. Carol Clark, assistant vice president for community and government relations. Danelle Whiteside, vice president for legal affairs and secretary to the board. And Gerald Harrison, the athletics director. In addition to the senior leadership team, we also have with us Michael Kazitz, assistant vice president for public safety and the chair of the APSU COVID-19 task force. We also have Sydney Hawkins, president of the Student Government Association. At this time, I would like to recognize President Elisa White and SGA President Sydney Hawkins to give opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Persinger. If you were able to join us Monday, you've already heard this speech, so I apologize. If you're just now joining us today, welcome. I want to start by saying how happy I am to be here with you all virtually. If there's one thing I miss about our campus, it is the day-to-day social interaction, and I hope that we're able to get a glimpse of that throughout today's town hall meeting. I hope that you all are able to get the answers to the questions that you've submitted, but I also hope that we're able to feel the friendliness and love that we normally feel on our campus online today. I'm continuously praying for everyone's safety and that everyone is able to finish their semester strong, academically, emotionally, and mentally. Lastly, I want to send an early congratulations to all of the May graduates. The resilience that is within each of you has allowed you to work hard towards this goal, despite everything that's going on. I commend each of you for your continuous hard work and dedication to earning your degree. I'm confident that this experience will only contribute to your ability to excel in the career that you have chosen for yourself. I would now like to introduce our president of Austin Peay, Dr. White.
Thank you, President Hawkins. I appreciate that introduction and the welcome to the students, because today's meeting is for the students. We want to make sure that students know that the decisions that we are making today are made with you and your needs in mind. And as you know, I live on campus, and so I'm still here. Even if I'm not in my office, I'm on campus every day. And the vibrancy that I love through the fall and spring semesters is not here right now. And so we have to create that in our connecting through virtual means, either on Zoom or you're doing it sometimes on social media. I've had many messages from you all on social media and some direct messaging. And I appreciate those opportunities because it's mostly community that gets us through every crisis, not just this one, but the ones that we'll face in the future. And so I needed the opportunity to connect with you. You'll notice that we have the entire team with us today, the senior leadership team, but there are many, many others who are leading on campus. Every fall at faculty staff convocation, I quote Jolene Kester, and I did it today on Twitter if you followed. But Dr. Kester said many, many years ago that leadership is strategic wisdom, or excuse me, it's collective wisdom used strategically. Collective wisdom used strategically. And we have a lot of leaders on campus in the academic side, on the business side, on the housing and dining side, student affairs, and IT who are working tirelessly to try to help us to help you get your degrees. And so I want to thank them for being willing to work so hard in this time to help us get through this challenge that the entire world is facing. a lot of those leaders are students. And so we have students who are staffing some offices, helping in the help desk in IT, for instance. And we have students who are assisting in the residence halls and still continuing to take care of lab animals. And I couldn't say in a really adequate way how important the student involvement is. And I appreciate also the leadership of the Student Government Association. So I wanted to just start by giving you an update on where we are for the COVID-19 response of the university right now. And I have to start by saying I'm so sorry that this semester you are facing a world that we've really never known, even in my entire lifetime, which is a long time. If I could set the clock back and have you back on campus and in your classes, I would absolutely do so. That said, I am more appreciative of what you bring to the table than I ever have been. There's a lot of talk over the generations about which is the best generation and who is the most selfless generation and what each generation brings to the table. But I can say that what I have seen among the students and the faculty and staff this spring has been greater than anything I've ever seen before in terms of people looking out for each other. And so we're committed to doing that for you. I also send congratulations to those of you who are graduating in May. Know that just because the commencement ceremony has been postponed, you will still be graduates. You will be sent your diplomas or have your degree in hand when you go on to graduate school or go to the next job. So to get us moving along, let me explain who Michael Cassitz is. He's on this call. I want him to wave his hand again. You may remember meeting who was our former chief of police, Chief Cassitz, on campus over the years, but he's now our assistant vice president for public safety. And I asked him to lead a COVID-19 response team, a task force of a large group of people, 27 to 33 people, representing physical plant and IT, and again, housing and dining and the academic affairs areas. We've got faculty, we've got a virologist on that, a nurse, our health clinic representatives, a lot of people on campus who have expertise in a variety of areas who can help make decisions that are the best going forward to make sure that you get an education and to make sure that you do so in as safe an environment as possible. And so Michael Cassitz and his group have been meeting almost every day for about 2 months now to help guide us through this process. I also asked General Bailey, if you'll raise your hand. General Ron Bailey is a retired lieutenant general in the Marine Corps. And if you've been in the Marines and been an officer in the Marines or Army, you know that you are used to dealing with crises around the world. And I asked General Bailey and Mr. Robinson, wave your hand, Mr. Robinson, to lead a smaller group to help us plan for the next 2 years, not just in the near term, but the next 2 years. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you that we don't have all the answers today. I can tell you what our intention is. Our intention is to have you back on campus in the fall. Our intention is to have you here in some form to take classes and to have activities, but they may not be exactly what you've been used to in the past, because we are going to make sure that we are following data, trends in terms of the spread of the virus, and making sure that we do whatever we do in a way that you can stay safe. And of course, a lot of that has to do with personal responsibility. Wherever you go, wherever you happen to be, if you are taking classes online at home, if you're here on campus, if you are shopping or working, you have to really think about the exposure that you have to other people who may not be as careful about socially distancing as you are. So we are hoping that all of our campus community members will remember to socially distance, to wash their hands, to make sure that they take care of themselves and others. And so we'll make some decisions as we go through the summer on what we can do in the fall, but I'm not going to tell you today that we have all those answers because the data are not clear. I'll also end with this at this moment before we take your questions. Communication shifting daily because our information is shifting daily. So we may answer one way today and then find out something else from the state or from our community or from the Department of Education that changes things tomorrow. And so whatever you hear today, please continue to follow our website. The COVID-19 bar at the top will take you to the latest data that we have and any recent decisions. And so just stay tuned and stay connected to your advisors and faculty, not only as you finish this semester, but as you plan for summer classes and for fall classes. And I'll let our moderator get us back on track.
Thank you, President Hawkins and President White. So now we're going to move on to the pre-submitted questions. And the first one is I'm going to direct to Mr. Robinson, which is, why are we being charged fees for online classes? You're muted, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Persinger. Appreciate that. Now that I'm unmuted, I appreciate you asking that question. And I would have to make an assumption that we're talking about the program services fees. And the reason that we charge those for the online classes is that basically takes everybody working together to provide the services to our students in what it is that we do on campus. One of the things that we have learned that online students are typically within about 100 miles of campus. So there is always the opportunity for students to take advantage of activities such as the athletic events, whether they use the Voice Center and that type of thing. There might be a follow-up question similar to the one asked that, well, why are we being charged those fees now when those things are not available? And I think that's a fair question too, but when all of the COVID-19 social distancing started and we had to go strictly to online classes, one of the things that we ended up having to do was identify resources that could be used to provide support to the online students. Things obviously are a lot different with an online environment, and as a consequence, there's additional costs associated with providing advisors and that type of thing. We also have taken certain people that work in some of our auxiliary operations and reassigned those to help out, like in the help desk. If any of you have contacted our help desk, most likely the person answering the phone was the person that usually works in our parking office. So we were able to take that individual and provide them to our IT department so that they could provide more assistance to our students that are taking the online classes. So again, we basically have taken the resources that we charge for these fees and reallocated them basically because of the online environment and in order to meet those student needs.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. The next question I'm going to direct to Dr. Gandy. Is there another option besides online proctoring? Because we feel like it is an invasion of privacy and it is a lot of hassle compared to what we used to have to do.
Of course, we had online classes before the COVID outbreak, and we had a particular company we used for the online proctoring, needed to teach that. However, once the COVID situation came, that company was not able to expand enough, given the national demand, to cover all the needs. So we made use of an existing TBR contract, and for our additional demand for online proctoring, we took advantage of another company. And of course, we have much less experience with that company, but it's a very reputable company. It does have some issues. It's not exactly like the old company we have, so there are some issues with it, but it's nationally used. It meets all federal guidelines for privacy issues, and we're rapidly getting information about this company and their practices on our distance education website, where that can be accessed by students so they'll understand how this company operates. But we're confident that this company meets all guidelines with regard to privacy and security, and we'll be getting out more information about questions students have about it.
Thank you, Dr. Gandy. And the next question I'm going to direct to Dr. White and possibly you too, Dr. Gandy. When will decisions about let me start that over. When will decisions about on-ground classes in August be made?
I'll start. I've asked the COVID-19 task force and the academic affairs office, which Dr. Gandy oversees, which would be the faculty with the deans and the chairs, to come up with scenarios that would allow us to offer on-ground classes in a way that would mitigate the spread of the coronavirus. And so I'm confident that that will happen in some way, but I would prefer to say we're going to do it and we plan to do it, but we're going to let you know how we do it as we get more definitive answers in terms of the classes and the class setups and how that students can make sure that their spaces are clean and what our cleaning protocols will be and what our safety protocols will be. So I'm actually going to ask Mr. Cassets to jump in just a minute. But the question in terms of when is not going to be, I can tell you now that the expectation is that we'll be on campus. I can't tell you specifically when we'll know how it will look because the data are not there. So many states, including Tennessee, loosened its requirements to shelter at home this week. And there will be more loosening of that next week. So I think we really need to be very careful and watch the data in the next couple of weeks to see if people are being wise as they make decisions about their travel and going to the grocery store and getting together and going out to eat. We need to make sure that the numbers don't spike. Now remember, when I talk about spiking, I'm not talking about a day. You may have a situation where there's a nursing home or a particular location, a plant that would have a number of positives at one time, but I'm talking about looking at trends. So if phase 1 opening is very successful, then the state of Tennessee will go to phase 2. And if that's successful, they'll be moving to phase 3. So as those numbers indicate that we really have changed our behavior in a way that we can responsibly be together and be together in a way that we are maintaining or containing the spread, then I think we'll be able to move forward. But I can't give a specific date. I've asked the COVID-19 task force to give me some recommendations by the end of May, but that's not going to include a date. It's gonna say more like, if this happens, then we can do this. If the trends are showing X, we can do Y. So I would like for Mr. Cassets to jump in on that. And then Dr. Gandy, if he'd like to as well on academic affairs.
Well, thank you. Yes, we, as the task force, are looking at numerous ways that we can come back to campus, but we have to do so in a healthy and safe manner. When our groups get together, what we're looking at are facilities, how we can open our facilities, maintain the cleanliness and sanitation of those facilities, but also keep social distancing. That's very important. There are some operations that see a lot of students in the beginning of August. So we're looking at those areas to figure out how we can keep our students safe as well as the employees that assist them. We're looking at classrooms and what is the acceptable amount of people that can be in classrooms, not by fire code, but by social distancing recommendations by the CDC. So right now, like Dr. White said, we are looking at the numbers. We're going to analyze the next couple weeks of how the COVID-19 spread is in the state of Tennessee and in Montgomery County specifically. We have a virologist working with people from the actuarial sciences? I can never say that word, that are running risk models for us to determine how many people may be exposed or may get COVID-19 as these restrictions are loosened. And then we have to figure out what the acceptable risk is. And then if somebody does get infected, how do we deal with that, whether they're in a residence hall room or in a classroom, and the exposures that they may have created. So it's not just so easy as opening the floodgates and telling everybody to come back. We need to do this in a systematic format that is based in what's best for the health and safety of our students, faculty, and staff.
Thank you, Dr. White and Mr. Kazitz. The last question I have as far as the pre-submitted questions, or actually, I'm sorry, that's not the last one, is I'm going to direct this to actually Mr. Robinson, and maybe others might want to add to this. What sort of visible and hidden impacts will we have because of loss of income for the campus and the college?
Well, we have, let's see, let me see, could you repeat that question? What would be the loss of income?
What sort of visible and hidden impacts will we have because of loss of income for the campus?
Well, one of the things, that's a good question, because we did have a loss of income revenue for this year as a result of COVID-19. We had a loss of NCAA revenue coming to the university for our athletic program in excess of $500,000. We had loss of income related to the rental of facilities, and a lot of our auxiliary operations, they've had a loss of income. One in particular is our parking and transportation. The loss of income there is because there's nobody on campus, there's no illegal parking occurring on campus, and there's no tickets being written. So there's an impact there. And we are addressing what actions that we need to take to, quote, balance the budget. Obviously, if the revenues go down, we have to offset that with reductions in expenditures. We also are putting together a 2020-2021 financial planning task force. That task force will begin, hopefully work sometime within the next week or two. It's a rather large task force because obviously if you're wanting to get ideas on how we can save money, it takes the entire university community to do that. And it really has to start from the ground up. That task force will be looking at all of the revenue impacts that we will have for next year, and whether they be enrollment decreases or we do anticipate that there will be some challenges for the state government because sales tax collections are not nearly as robust as during this period of time when we're staying at home. People aren't spending as much money. So that's going to be an issue for the state. And unfortunately, one of the things that we can probably expect there is that there will be a reduction in the state support that higher education receives from the state government. So we're going to be looking at those items and trying to figure out what best ways that we can mitigate the impact of those reductions in revenue. And most likely, we're one of the things that we'll look to is reduce things rather than people. That's going to be the number one priority. And services to students obviously will be at the top of the list too. So our goal is to protect the people that we have employed here at the institution, if at all possible, and eliminate some unnecessary, not unnecessary, but our wants instead of our needs in terms of spending on campus.
I have to agree with that so much, Mr. Robinson, because students may not know that 72% of our budget is allocated to employees. That's for staffing. That's the salaries and benefits. Well, we don't have a lot of extra. In fact, we don't have any extra that I know of. We are among the leanest in terms of staffing across the state. I didn't look at last year's numbers after this year's numbers after we hired some additional advisors. But before that, we had the lowest number of administrators, the lowest number of faculty, and the lowest number of professional staff per FTE student in the state. And we had the second lowest number of clerical and IT staff, only to fall behind one other institution in the state. And so we're a lean operation anyway. What I'm most concerned about, and what I think that we can protect and we'll do our best to protect, is to protect the people who are important to you. And by that, I mean, we're all important. You're important. We are Govs. And so our motto is very, it's not really a motto, but it's the word that, it's the phrase we've been using for several years, Govs lead. Because when alumni talk to me about their experiences at Austin Peay, whether it's been 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago, and even some 50 years ago, they all tell me it's because of the interactions they had with other students, the interactions they had with faculty, in some cases deans and advisors and librarians and physical plant workers who matter to them, and those relationships matter to them. And so when we talk about budgets and declining revenues, what we want to do is preserve those things, those people who help support you and make this the best place to be. And I was talking with Vice President Norman yesterday about services for students in student life and leadership. You'll still access services such as career services. That's going to be incredibly important as you go forward. It's also still important that you engage in social clubs and athletic opportunities, and that you engage in esports, and that you engage in the history club. And I mean, all of those things that give you an opportunity to connect with each other. And so things may look different, but the visible signs may be in a format change, but we're still working hard to make sure you have opportunities to connect and have a vibrant experience as a student here in your classes and outside of your classes. So we're committed to trying to protect the people who make Austin Peay really what it is, and who we are as an institution.
Thank you, Dr. White and Mr. Robinson. That is the last pre-submitted question we have. And so I'm going to move over to submitted questions, which we only have one so far. This is again, a financial question. So Mr. Robinson, I'm going to direct it your way. Will the university continue to pay student employees after the semester ends and over the summer until we are allowed to return to work?
Well, when the COVID-19 situation first started, one of the things that we were told by the federal government was that we needed to continue to pay all of the students that were on the federal work study program, and whether they were here or not, and whether they were working on campus. And so what we did was continue to pay the students that were on campus work that is funded by the university as well. And we've done that it will be through the end of the semester. Then in the summer, when we start transitioning back on campus and we ensure that it's a safe environment for not only the students, but also our faculty and staff, then we would open up some employment of the students in certain offices that typically depend on student workers quite heavily. That's in our admissions office, even in public relations, I believe, has a dependency on having student workers help with the workload in that office. So I believe that to answer the question specifically, no, there will not be any continued payment to students, regardless of whether they are working in the summer. It will be actually when they will be working for the particular office during the summer.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. That's all the submitted questions we have, but I did want to touch on one thing, which is commencement. You know, we've had a lot of discussions about commencement and looking at other dates. and I'd like to direct to Dr. Carol Clark to her to maybe address what kind of plans we have so far, what we're doing in the interim, and those kinds of things.
Thank you, Mr. Persinger. Well, like President White, commencement is one of my favorite days on campus and one of the things I most enjoy being involved in. And so we are sad that we won't be gathering together a week from tomorrow in the Dunn Center, but we do remain committed to inviting all of the May graduates back to campus for a commencement ceremony on campus when it's safe for us to do so and in a manner that is safe to do so. Right now, as with other things, we can't give you a specific date because we are still looking at things. It's a bit early to make a prediction on that, but when we do arrive at a date, we have a large group of people working on that. We will announce it in sufficient time for people who want to travel back to campus to be able to do so. And until then, our public relations office has been very busy putting together a special video celebration, virtual celebration for our May 2020 graduates, and that will be posted on Friday, May 8th at noon. And we hope that lots of our students, when you have an opportunity to interact with that, will share with us some of your photos and videos of the way you're celebrating the completion of your degree with your family and friends. Since we can't be together, we'd love to see what you're doing. And we will keep you posted and looking forward to seeing you back on campus at some point in the future. Thanks, Mr. Persinger.
Thank you, Dr. Clark. And we have received one more submitted question. This is about the CARES Act. So I believe that's Mr. Robinson's area again. And so the question is there any update on the distribution of the CARES Act?
Yes, the CARES Act, obviously, we get 50% of the funds that are available to us right now. We don't have the money, by the way, here on campus. We have the ability to draw that down when we begin the disbursement of those funds to the students. The senior leadership team met this morning to look at the options for how those funds could be distributed. There are certain restrictions on who is eligible for those distributions. And so we looked at the information that was provided by our financial aid office, who worked very, very hard to pull that for us. And in concept, we are ready to move forward. We just don't know exactly what the amounts will be. But as soon as that is determined, we will be able to disperse those probably within 48 hours to those students who have elected for direct deposit. And those students who have not elected for direct deposit, it will take some more time because an actual physical check will need to be printed and then mailed to you. So again, once the decision is made as far as what the amounts will be, and I think we're probably very close to getting to that point, then I expect that we will be distributing these funds next week.
Mr. Robinson, just to clarify the amounts, if I'm not mistaken, Provost Gandy was talking about the numbers of students or the categories of students who are eligible, and the eligibility is determined by the Department of Education, which is a federal agency. So there's a statute that was passed, and then the statute has been interpreted by the Department of Education, and they are giving us guidance on how to distribute it. And so the reason we don't know exactly how much is because we have to know how many of our students actually are eligible under the Department of Education guidelines. And then you know how far it has to go. And so is Provost Gandy, that's the rub? Trying to figure out how many students are eligible under Department of Education guidelines, and that will help us determine how much they get.
Absolutely. It is our goal to give every eligible student some financial assistance. However, the guidelines on what constitutes an eligible recipient has been changing. About a week ago, it settled into what we believe its final form. So it's our goal to give every eligible student financial assistance.
Thank you. We've received an additional question. This is an athletics question, so I'm gonna direct this one to Mr. Harrison. Because sports does not lend itself to social distancing, is there any predictions about the fall season play? And I'm going to ask, do you think we'll see football this year?
Well, I sure hope so. Right now, we don't have a definite answer for that. We're going to, as Dr. White has said a few times, we're going to go with the data and follow the CDC guidelines and the guidelines of the state of Tennessee. But, you know, we are optimistic that we'll have an opportunity for fall sports and look forward to get our defending our OVC championship in football if we get that opportunity. And I can't wait to see people back in Forterra and the Dunn and all over campus. But I do believe that we'll have a chance to. We just got to make sure that we're doing it within the guidelines. I know we're all hopeful to getting everybody back in our facilities and playing sports real soon.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. I certainly am myself, so hopefully that will work out. Well, that is all the questions we've received. So I think this is probably going to wrap it up. As a reminder, we will be posting these recordings or the recordings of these sessions on our social. Oh, wait, we've got another question that just popped up. Let me grab that one real quick. And again, this is a CARES Act question, so I'm going to just kind of leave this open to whoever is best to answer it. Are the stipulations and guidelines for the CARES Act based on the spring semester only or the entire 2019-2020 academic year?
It's sort of a split answer because there's two parts to the stipulations. One has to do with the FAFSA. The FAFSA is an annual process. It applies for a given year. So having a valid FAFSA this year, that's that part. But as far as the eligibility related to what courses you're taking, that's spring semester.
Thank you, Dr. Gandy.
And I want to add to that as well, because a few days ago, we were under the impression that a FAFSA was not required. And so under the new guidance from the Department of Education, we have new information. But Provost Gandy, you told us this morning that students who would otherwise be eligible, who just need a FAFSA, will have an opportunity to submit one. Is that correct?
Yes, in order to be eligible for this money, you must have a valid FAFSA. Just because you have filled out a FAFSA doesn't mean it's valid. So you would need to check. If you're unsure, please check with financial aid as to whether or not you currently have a valid FAFSA. If you do not have any kind of FAFSA, but are FAFSA eligible, you will have a period of time here, not very long, so I wouldn't wait very long, to apply for a FAFSA. Just because you apply, though, doesn't mean it's valid, but it gives you a shot at getting some of this money. So I would encourage any student who hasn't applied to apply. And if you are not sure if your FAFSA is valid, please check with financial aid.
Thank you, Dr. White and Dr. Gandy. We received one more question, and I'm going to direct this to Mr. Kazitz. Will students be required to be tested for the coronavirus upon return in the fall?
At this time, we don't anticipate that to be true, but that doesn't mean that guidelines don't change. So please be flexible. Right now, we don't have the capacity to test people, and even the local health departments are not able to test everyone that needs to be tested right now. So we just have to see the availability and see what the best practices are from other institutions and CDC guidelines, and then that type of decision will be made.
Thank you, Mr. Kazitz. I haven't received any additional questions, so I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Dr. White, any closing remarks?
Of course. I just want to say that I do miss you, and I hope you're taking care of yourselves. I also want to reiterate what I said at the beginning. You have some personal power as well. And so many of our community members are not at special risk, even if they were to be exposed to the virus. But that doesn't mean that all of the members of our family, our Austin Peay family, are in that situation. We've got people who are in classes who are suffering from some immune compromised situation, or they have people at home who are. And so as you make this personal decisions going forward, know that you'll have opportunities on campus, but you'll also have opportunities to continue with remote online education if that works best for you. But know that the world continues to move and the world continues to move forward. And if we were to completely shut down campus for 6 months or 2 years, and once we started again, the risk of the virus cropping up and spreading again could happen. And so we've got to figure out what is the right thing for us and what is the right thing for you to do. So take responsibility for yourselves as you make decisions about what you should do going forward, and know that we will do everything in our power to see that you are safe and can learn in an environment conducive to learning. But I want to see you. I miss you. And so I hope that you're well and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, Dr. White. As a reminder, we'll be posting these recordings, or the recordings of these sessions, on our social media sites where additional questions can be submitted. Thank you for joining us today. Bye.